G'day everyone, and welcome to the inaugural Risky Rollers podcast. I'm Dalton, and I'm here with Locky.
Hello, everybody.
And to start off, I'd just like to give a massive thanks to Dice Arcade. They're a brick and mortar store in Sydney. They've got everything from 40k to Star Wars, Fantasy Flight, Atomic Mass games, to Infinity board games, RPGs, card games, of course, Magic, and everything else you could want. So make sure to check them out for anything you need. And also make sure to check out our Discord and our Patreon, which we've got set up for the channel. Jump in the Discord, hang out with us, and have a bit of a chat. And jump on Patreon if you want to help us out a bit. And also get access to some exclusive content, including another podcast that we do at the pre-game show before each battle report. And this is going to be our podcast where, while we're aiming to get it to be every second week, a fortnightly affair, it's probably going to be a bit more irregular and probably a bit more often while we're with the current restrictions and due to COVID. Just trying to make sure we've still got stuff coming out for you.
Yeah, these current lockdowns are pretty crazy in our part of the world at the moment. So because we can't film and we literally can't do anything else, we're just going to talk to you through your ear holes.
Yeah. Yep, that's the normal way we phrase that.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So by now, if you're listening to this, you've probably seen a couple of our videos and so on. So you'll know that we're doing battle reports and other 40k related content. We're hoping that we can dive into a bit more of an expansive array of content through the podcasts and moving on from here. Being able to talk a bit more about the lore and the hobby side of things, as well as actually throwing dice on the channel.
Yeah, as well as we'll be having people on the podcast that's not just Dalton and myself. So the people from our clubs, the people that are some named people within the Australian scene, Australian tournament scene, Australian local scene, and then also just kind of keeping that variety of not just Dalton and myself talking to you guys, but trying to show all aspects of the hobby that we all love in every possible way, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to expand the roster, to speak. With that said, let's get to know a bit of the roster we've got currently. Locky, you've been in the hobby a while. Do you want to tell us a bit about how that came about?
Yeah, sure. So it's weird because when you say I've been in the hobby a while, and it is true, but and I think this is very common lately. I think in the last maybe like 2 to 3 years of people having a nearly 20-year gap of not doing it. So basically, that's kind of what happened with me. So I started in like the year 2000. So I think I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I was in London. I was actually in London with family, and then my cousin at the time was like massively into it and had like all these custom old everything full metal custom Terminators and crazy Space Marine chapter and
yeah, there'd be a lot of metal stuff going on back then.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It was second edition. It was just the really old school designs and everything. Anyway, went to the London store and I lost it. I was like, this is amazing. When you're a kid that's obsessed with Star Wars, and in Australia in 2000, like it was, internet hadn't even, like I didn't even have internet in my house at that time. Like it just you just didn't hear about what was going on in other parts of the world and everything. Anyway, so got my first box set. The ones that I don't even know if GW still do. Oh yeah, they do. The ones where you get the paints. You used to be able to get a whole bunch of paints and the minis with it as well. And the rocket launcher, Space Marine guy with like this massive apparatus and his and they're just mono pose and it was horrible. But anyway, loved it. And then got back to Melbourne and I realised that okay, there is a Games Workshop here, and there was one in there was two, I think. There was one in Sidious and another one somewhere else. Anyway, and then just kind of pushed and just got further and deeper into the hobby until I was like 13, 14, when puberty hit. And I'm pretty sure this is the standard of what happens with most people. What happened with most people back then. you know, at the time you couldn't take the the damage to your social status if you had
Yeah.
one, and you know had to give it the flick, and that was pretty much what it was. And I always loved going to a GW store and playing. I think it was only on a Saturday, and a Thursday would be like bring your own army, and then Saturday would be, you just have random people, and they would like set up some little story campaign on these different boards. And this was around the time the Lord of the Rings had just come in as well. I think it was 2001 when that movie was released. So there was a lot going on, and the stores really had this kind of inclusive, friendly local game store sort of vibe. But that was at a GW as well. And then
at the actual official GW
yeah,
store.
at Games Workshops, yeah, like the one in
Nice.
for Melbourne listeners, if anyone's listening, the Chadston store was like the prominent spot in like the southeast for ages. It was amazing. And then the city store before it moved twice, I think, but it was in
Okay, yeah.
it was tucked in behind Burke Street in this crazy little arcade spot. It was like a 9 meter find.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it was cool. And I remember one of the games playing there was like a Space Hulk, and this is what gave me my first love really of Army, which was Tyranids, which was a Space Hulk game. So it was Gene Stealers and Hormagaunts against like two Terminators, and I couldn't
Yes.
understand why no Terminator was dying. I'm like, I don't get it. What the hell? There's like, there's 20 of these things. I'm like, how? And I asked the guy, I'm like, how is this happening? He's like, oh, it's because of armor save. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
It was such a thematic and atmospheric game, Space Hulk.
exactly, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then had a big hiatus, and then around 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I just got fed up with no, it was actually more, sorry, it was about 3 years ago. I got fed up with what kind of content was on TV and stuff. Um, and then just started branching back into different kinds of mediums. And
What
then
you mean season 378 of The Bachelor wasn't doing it for you?
bro, I don't watch reality TV. Just get out of my face. No, I just got sick of the lack of creativity coming out of sci-fi and fantasy based stuff, content in film and television. I'm a big film buff. I love movies, so um, that was a shame. And then I was like, look, there's got
Yeah.
to be something better out there. And then I just started branching into books. And then I spent like pretty much 12 months just reading heaps of different books. And then I just had this weird light bulb moment. I'm like, I remember 40K. I remember I read a bunch of those books, and I'd read the Horus Heresy stuff. And then I got into the books, and I was like, well, I don't really have the interest of painting the models again. And then, like a month after reading like 5 books, I was like, I'm buying models like
Yeah.
now. And then so I bought, yeah, I was tossing up for ages, Grey Knights or Death Watch, because I've always been a convert. I've always liked converting models, even
Yeah.
when I was a
Yeah.
kid. So I always got drawn around, and I'm pretty sure this is pretty common too. Especially when you're young, never having a full army to play with. I think the
Yeah.
first army I ever had to play was with Chaos and Tyranids have been my like love ever since day one. But yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it. It was kind of like, I feel it's not a foreign story. I feel like that story is quite common,
Yeah, I've heard
especially now.
plenty of variations on that. Yeah, you've got your dark years where you move away from it, and
Well, it's weird because when
yeah,
I
you
when I
rediscover
when
it
I
a bit later.
came back, I was like, huh, this is so cool. This is so unique. Like, I'm gonna tell everyone about how like my return, whatever, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I've heard that a bunch of times. I was like, oh. I was like, really? It's like, oh, that sucks. And just felt like a lame Lord hack. Um,
I
but
think
yeah,
it's an
so
interesting story. I think it's a fairly common one in a lot of what would be considered quote unquote like nerdy hobbies, where you've got that sort of a bit left of center sort of different different core concept, whether it's models or collectibles or
I mean, yeah, I think it's
this
also
sort of thing.
very indicative of the kind of friends that you have. It's a huge, obviously, massive changer of whether that takes you in a certain way or not.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
And I tried so much to get my friends into it, even when I was like 13 and 14, and they're like, would just stop and be like, Lucky, seriously, no,
Like, dude,
no,
what are you doing? Like,
no, bro, like,
you want to sit here and push toy soldiers around a table? There's girls over there. Like,
it's not just that, but I mean, like, because I played heaps of sport too, like I played heaps of footy and soccer and all that sort of stuff, and you can't talk to footy people at that age that painting models and having that kind of deep imagination, and that's the thing, when you really kind of wired that way. I mean, back then, now it's very different, but back then you were either kind of into the kind of fantasy, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit. Like, I think by the time I was 8 years old, I'd read The Hobbit, I think, like 4 or 5 times. Like, I just loved it. So, you just don't. Now it's super common, but back then you just didn't really get it. I say back then as though like I'm old, like I'm not even 30, but it's like, for me, when I think about it, it was ages ago. Well, what about you, man? How was your? I know yours is a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think mine's probably, again, not too uncommon. I think it's the other main stream of hobby involvement, which is that back when I was in like 2013-ish, I would have been 13 or 14 at the time. Went up to a model railroad exhibition of all things up in Brisbane at Pine Rivers. So shout out to those guys because they're a great bunch. And there were a couple of guys there that had a table, and I'm there up, at with all the model railroads kicking around, because that was the thing I was into, with my father. And then there were these guys there. There were 2 tables. One was playing like historical war games. I think they were playing like Roman era historical war games at the time, and I'm like, that's awesome. And they were recreating actual battles and stuff. And then there was
pretty cool.
And then I think the year after they were there as well, but then there was also a table that had some guys playing Warhammer 40k, and they would have been playing either 4th or 5th edition, I think, at the time.
Yep.
And I remember very specifically that one guy was playing Blood Angels, and he had like the Mephiston model, the old metal one.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was like, that's such an incredible model. It's like this heavy metal vampire thing. Like, what is this? And it was awesome. And the other guy was playing like Imperial Guard, I think. And they were basically just playing this whole exhibition match and chatting with people and having a good time. And I remember being my 12 or 13-year-old self or whatever it was, going up and annoying the hell out of them for the whole weekend, and generally making a nuisance of myself. And then I got back home from that, because we'd gone away for the weekend, and I went back home and got on eBay and bought like as many I got my parents to go on eBay and bought as many codexes, and I think like 5 of the old monopose Space Marines, and I was off. Didn't actually. So I read a bunch of the lore and the books and the old codices. I've got a half decent collection of the old 3rd edition and 4th edition codexes.
Yeah, nice.
And then it wasn't until a couple of years later that we found out there was the nearest Games Workshop store was a couple of hours drive away. And I managed to get up there a couple of times a year, and actually got into Necrons as my first army.
Right.
And then I started with Necrons, and again just generally made a nuisance of myself at the store. And then didn't really properly get into it until after school, when got a job and actually had a disposable income happening. And then I could put a bit more money into it, and after moving to Melbourne for uni and having 5 stores all within half an hour's tram ride, just took off from there.
And that would have been what, like 3 years ago?
2017, so 4 years ago now.
Oh, okay, 4 years ago. Yeah.
And then really in the last couple of years, getting involved with yourself and the club. Really, knuckling down and getting some painting done and actually finishing projects and things. And yeah, that's really about it.
What's the beauty of being an adult, right? Is that you can you can like, what is it, self-flagellate? What is it, what's the thing where you whip yourself, but like mentally?
Self-flagellate?
Yeah, yourself, and just make sure you become responsible for the things you commit to do. Whereas a kid, you can't do that. You're like, I think self-discipline is more of a the
appropriate
right
term.
Yeah, probably. um, yeah. Okay. So Necrons for you.
Yeah.
What was it about Necrons?
I mean, like I'd seen Terminator and that sort of thing, and I think that the first contact with Necrons I had was the 3rd edition Codex, which I still own, and it's probably still one of my favorite 40k books that they've done.
So that's the one with the warrior on the Codex, right? And the
with the
monolith,
warrior,
the monolith behind it. Yeah.
It's the warriors marching out, and they've got the monolith in the background. There's green glow behind them.
Yeah, that was my era of playing, was those codexes.
So that's the 3rd edition book, and I mean the 3rd edition books in general I really like, but the Necron Codex, and reading through that, they had like the breakdowns of the weapons. They had all these short stories that were just sort of like interwoven and pieced throughout the book, and it was structured like it was like an Imperial report on the Necrons, and that was something that was evident in a lot of the earlier books. Was that all of the codexes were written from an Imperial perspective, and so every page and unit entry was like a report from some Inquisitor or from some guardsman or debriefing or something where they'd encountered them. And it was so cool. They're like, there's these these automaton robots that are kicking around, that are just like insane levels of overpowered. And for whatever reason, that just clicked with me. I never really made, weirdly enough, the Terminator connection. Because I think by that point, like there was sort of the joke of them being, the Terminator, and Reanimation Protocols back then was literally called "We'll Be Back," which was fantastic. But it was never these are Terminators. It was always like these are undead skeletons in space.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's cool. I never really thought about it that way, actually. I mean, is this 3rd edition? Is that new lore Necrons, or is this old lore Necrons?
That's old lore Necrons, pre-Ward.
Right.
But that said, again, a lot of people were upset with the change to the lore. It didn't really bother me too much because they had a bunch of new models and they were all epic. So.
Well, the kind of new lore just gave them actually somewhat of a personality, right? Like, because prior to that, they was just like, they were kind of tyranny in a way.
Yeah. And that's actually something that I think may have been one of the reasons they changed it, in all seriousness, was that as far as the design space for them, the Tyranids were encroaching on that. And it's not they couldn't have taken the Tyranids in a different direction instead, but they decided to move the Necrons away.
I've heard the same thing float around from a few people within the scene, sort of speculate that that's their motivation as to what the design change was.
Yeah, and look, in all honesty, like I really enjoy the new Necron lore and the different complexity and nuance they can give it. And again, it kind of ties back to one of the reasons I enjoy 40k as a whole, being that the Necrons had all this new lore added, but it's not really a retcon, because all the old lore was just the information that
they had at the time.
They had at the time.
Yeah.
And I like that the older books are set up in such a way, and I mean the newer books kind of are, but it's much harder to pull that from them. But the older books were set up in such a way that it was very explicit that these were all Imperial reports. And the other book I'd look to for this as well would be the 3rd and 4th edition, or 4th edition and 5th edition, I don't know which ones they were, the Tau Codices from back then. They had the same feel to them, because the Tau were a new army, or a new race.
Yeah, so this is first edition Codex for them, right? Because they came out in 4th edition.
I'm 80% sure they had a 3rd edition Codex, because there was a big change to them in 4th edition when they got a bunch of extra stuff.
That was it. Yeah, and they had a revamp, right? Because then that's when they brought out. Yeah. Because all I remember is it's similar. Like I said in our battle report, I remember images, right? So I remember the covers. So I remember the cover of the White Dwarf. I don't know what number it was, but that they were released, and it was literally like at the ground looking up at a fire warrior and the battle suits behind it, but the battle suit looks massive. It looks like the size of a Titan, right? It was huge. They look huge, but the scale is busted. And then
it's like a Terminator.
But that was the
model.
same. But that was the cover art for the Codex, their first Codex.
Yeah,
and then
that's the one.
The second one, the revamp one, was the one with the Tau Commander battle suit with the air distribution
Airburst fragmentation launcher.
That on his right hand, and he's like
Yep,
flying in the air.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's the one. And the plasma rifle with his other arm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So cool. Right.
Yeah.
On the right page.
But yeah, and that whole concept, and I mean, 40k and Warhammer before it drew a whole bunch of inspirations and stuff from all sorts of different settings. And so, like, you can look at an individual piece of it and go, oh, that's taken from here, or that's taken from there. And you can sort of, and people do often have a go at it for that. But then it's drawing all of those together into a really unique theme and setting and feel. That caught me with the books to start with, and that's what keeps me going with it.
I think personally that's one of the things that makes it so successful. I mean, look, it's a game that's been going for a very long time, and I think the reason to that success is its level of relatability. You know, all you need to do is just look at the Imperium's lore. I'm not sitting here saying did a write amazing lore, right? Don't get me wrong, but the setting is written very well, and no one can argue that. In terms of, you know, Imperium being pseudo-Roman Empire, you know, the fact that each chapter is essentially pulled from a certain part of human history. You know, there's certain literally entire battles and campaigns and stuff they've written that is pulled from human history. Because of that, when they write characters, you know, you take the bullshit Space Marine yada 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 whatever out of it, and you look at the core concepts of like, why is this character acting this way? You're gonna go, oh, that makes sense because they're part of this chapter, and then this chapter is aligned with, you know, White Scars being Mongols and their whole concept of what they are. And look, it's not super accurate. We're not doing history here, but like, it makes sense, and it retains that level of relatability and therefore believability when certain things happen and why they happen. To a degree, and this is one of the things that you just don't see in TV shows, in writing stories, in any kind of story written where you have a character or you have a group of. If you took the Imperium as a character, and you go, why is this thing doing what it's doing? Or if you took a Space Marine chapter and said, why is this doing what it's doing? Any kind of conceptualize it how you want, but if you have a character doing something, they're supposed to be doing something for a certain reason, and then all of a sudden just decides to do something differently, which happens so much in movies. You're kind of a bit like, oh, that sucks. That doesn't make sense. But a lot of stuff with 40k regarding the specific faction breaks up, you go, oh, yeah, they would do that. Well, that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
Barring a few, like I said, they don't write everything amazing, but it's like the core concept settings, I think that's what's, and it's diverse. It crosses everything. Like I think the diversity of the universe, the setting is great. Yeah, I think if you come from any part of life, you can find
you can find a part of it that you can relate to, and
100%. And you know, and that's okay. You could argue there's underrepresentation of women, and then there's a few other things that are underrepresented, and there's you know, you could argue it and be pretty right, you know, because you know, the game was made in a generation which didn't put that as the foremost, you know, important thing. Yeah, so you know,
it's based on a foundation of, you know, 1970s British satire, like
exactly. So you know, and it's changing. Like, I mean, at least there's still a whole faction. And look, to be honest, some of my most favorite characters and people in the lore are female characters. You know, and I reckon some of them are written really, really, really well. So. Anyway, that's not the point of what we're talking about, but I think the diversity, contrary to what most people think, the actual diversification of what you can enjoy about 40k, I think,
and the potential for specific stories to be told is incredible. And I suppose that idea of that potential and that specificity, also the generality of the setting that allows for specific stories, is the other big thing about it. Is that, and it's something that that was played up a lot in earlier editions as well, and still comes through. And it's the reason that I'm enjoying a lot of the current White Dwarf releases and stuff, where they're taking the time to look into, you know, hobbyists' custom chapters and armies and things. Is that 40k and fantasy and Warhammer Fantasy before it was squatted, and now Sigmar as well. It's not about, you know, Rowboat and his space smurfs, and it's not about you know, Sigmar and his space marines, or It's about your dudes. It's about your little character and his intrepid band of guardsmen that are alongside him, or it's about your neon blue and red space bugs that are nomming everything in their path. Like and there's that element of 40k and everything, that the story and the setting is all there to facilitate your dudes and your army and your projects and your cool ideas and characters, and to let them have a place which they can exist and fight other people's dudes.
Well, yeah, like I said, that the setting and the structure is written well. Even if you say like campaigns are written pretty well. I mean, look, you could argue, it's easy to write something broad and vague, and yeah, it is. But I think that's what's so encapsulating. But and look, it was the same time as D&D, give or take.
Well, I mean, Warhammer was originally Citadel. Sorry, Games Workshop were originally creating D&D based miniatures.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first Rogue Trader is more like an RPG, right? Like, I've never played it. I've just heard people talk about it, but it's kind of like what you have D&D now with miniatures and quote, like kind of like a pen and paper RPG, but more with more rules, right? Like that was Rogue Trader.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the core concept is written about being able to explore and make something and build something out of nothing. And the old White Dwarfs, when you're talking about the new White Dwarfs, the old White Dwarfs used to do that so well, where they would showcase someone's army, either someone from the community, the publication, and even the way to engage with the community. The White Dwarf things, like, look, I think it's just how I learned how to dry brush and like what edge highlighting nostalgia was in a White Dwarf.
It is, yeah. I mean, a lot of that was in old
nice,
Codexes.
But oh my god, if I was, I'd love to be a kid growing up with Warhammer now. If I was 9 or 10 years old now with like YouTube and everything,
I would be amazing. I would happily commit multiple homicides to have this sort of stuff hanging around back then.
Man, it's it's crazy. I mean, look, so do you find that there's any aspect of like the hobby as a whole that you kind of gravitate more towards, like the game, competitive or narrative, lore, hobby?
Definitely the lore and narrative side of things, but very specifically where it interacts with the hobby. I love conversions and kit bashes and that sort of thing. I'm not the best at them. I can't sculpt to save my life, but like that aspect and that idea of creating my own, custom dudes and characters and a narrative and a small portion of the setting that they exist in, that's fantastic, and that's really the reason that I'm interested in 40k and Warhammer Fantasy and Sigmar, rather than historicals, rather than other variations of wargame and other hobbies, even video games for that matter. It's like, I'm watching somebody else's story. I'm not creating my own.
I mean, well, it's like, look, it is hard to draw other kind of real world parallels aside from I mean, you have to be into the lore, right? Like,
I mean,
we know people that don't really care about the lore at all and just like love playing the game,
yeah, absolutely.
So it's. I mean, I'm pretty much the same. Like creating a narrative around a character or a story, and then how that connects with. How that connects with the conversion. Converting is just so much fun. It's the reason why, like when I started, my first army back was Deathwatch, because I wanted to be able to go, right, I can justify any conversion here, build it into a story, but also put it on the table.
Yeah, and
go,
that's
this is what epic. It is. And it's the same thing with Chaos. Chaos, you can literally just make whatever you want and call it what you want, and then you go, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, all right.
And I feel that you can write such great stories within certain bounds. Like I feel that there are aspects of the hobby that is quite limiting in what you can do by design, or reword to maybe say, writing, if you were making an Ultramarine chap, trying to create custom characters within the existence of Ultramarines, you know what I mean? Like it's it's
Right.
hard. It's hard now. I think it's harder now with the way they've progressed the story and the way they've done certain
Yeah,
things
yeah.
and all these kinds of things. Just is a little bit difficult, which is, I think it's fine. You know,
Yeah.
you just leave
I
it and
mean-
go, right, make your own chapter, make your own
Yeah.
reason. You know, like
I
go
mean, for
deep
that
dive
matter,
in it.
even with particularly prominent chapters like the Ultramarines or even the Blood Angels, there's still several companies they don't deal with, and they do that for that reason, is to leave that room. If you turn around and go, this is, Captain Gary of the Ultramarines' 7th Company, or one of the companies that they don't talk about very much in the lore, there's room there for you to do that, because they haven't named all 10 captain, or all 13, or how many there are at the moment, captains, and said, this is each captain, and this is their, their personality, and here's their forces they use.
Yeah.
And they do leave that room for it, which I think is something that's quite important about it.
Yeah, that is good. I mean, there's nothing like creating something from the ground up. But like, I mean,
Yeah.
look, there's that and painting for me. Painting is been insanely therapeutic for me as I've gotten older and dealing with children and all sorts of other things that you can just really. I mean, it was because I used to play so much video games, and I was a Destiny addict for a very long time. Shifting into a hobby where it's still a game, but you have something tangible at the end of it. You know, whether you paint it really well or just do it to get it on the board or whatever, you still have something physical that you just don't get with video games.
Well, yeah, because you can look at it. That's something that you've made, that you've put your time and your effort and your skill into, and you've come out with something at the other end.
And it's one of those things
yeah.
that you see benefits. Like, we've seen this with a couple of guys in our club where we've gone, and I've said this, and I'll say this now. Like, if you want to get better at painting, because I think I'm not top tier, but I'm above decent painter.
Oh, absolutely.
But, like, the way I got back that skill was do something every day. It's just repetition, right? Like, and we've seen a couple guys in our club where I've given them that advice, going like, even if it's 30 minutes, right? Doesn't matter. You just do so every day. And
pick up a brush and do something.
Do it. And it's the same thing with writing. Like, everyone kind of gets with their lore or whatever. They get to a point where they go, oh, this story sucked, or this bit's retired. It's like, okay, we'll just write it again, or write something different, or like Tolkien didn't just like start writing day one and was like, I'm gonna write arguably one of the greatest stories of all time.
Yeah.
Like, it takes time and it takes repetition, but sometimes when you look at the things as momentum, especially now with things like the quality of story, the quality of fanfic that gets written, the quality of painting that exists that you can see, that's if you're on Instagram or anything, you see it plastered in front of you, it can become demoralizing and can negate your desire to sort of want to get there and go, oh well, what's the point, kind of thing. Personally, I don't understand that, but I can sympathize why people feel that way. But
at the end of every single one of those painters or writers started by having to learn what a paintbrush is and why are they different sizes and what's
exactly. And you don't think that they felt the same too? Like, you don't think some of them, like, now we're probably looking at like Phil Kelly's work from like 2002 Golden Demon winning models and being like, that's ridiculous, I could never do that. And then 10 years later, here they are. It's just I don't know. I think it's a big thing. I think it's really important for people to manage their own expectations, but continually work at them and in everything, in all aspects of the hobby, which is
great.
And
I mean, I guess that's something that this hobby, miniatures and painting and wargaming allows you to do in a lot of different areas. Playing video games as a hobby is great, but you're only ever going to become good at playing video games.
And you don't really gain anything from it. Like, okay, look,
and
I mean, StarCraft, you can make a couple million, fine, but then like with hobby, you get so much more. You get, for starters, a way better community.
Oh yeah.
Like, wow. And then also you have all these other skills, and you look at the kind of people you and I have met from all walks of life that you just I feel it's just at a different caliber. It's at a different level compared to video games.
It is. I mean, I've heard
even
it said
board
before,
games
and
as
it's something that I'll echo here is that, like Warhammer and miniatures and that sort of thing. It's not one hobby. It's several different hobbies all jammed together. Because there is, you want to relax and read a book and something like that. Well, they're there for you. You want to watch something, they're there. Play video games. Well, there's video games about it. You want to do something physical. Well, you can meet up with your friends and play. Well, not at the moment, but in general, you can meet up with friends and play like a tabletop game. And you can paint models. You can build and convert models. You can do artwork. You can write your own story. There's so many different aspects of it that are involved.
and
it makes it accessible from so many different angles.
It's crazy that I look back now, because I was an artist too when I was younger, and all I wanted to be was a concept artist and be a concept artist for film before I knew actually what a concept artist was, right? And then all I would do every day when I was starting high school and that would be drawing Space Marines and draw comic book, but like I draw, and the thing is I draw comic book characters like Batman and Superman and stuff, but I draw them like grim dark, like 40k, so they'd be like real dark and evil, and everything was grim and the end of the world and grim dark, whatever. And that's the thing, like when I look back on it now, even in the last couple of months, I go, wow, 40k has really shaped a lot of my life. Even when
that's something that's interesting, is that we've spent a decent portion of our lives and devoting time and effort to doing 40k and other related things, and it in turn it comes back on us and shapes how we've lived and how we do things as well.
100%. I mean, not to wanting to go too deep, because we've dragged on this for quite a while, but I think there is something to be said about the philosophy of 40k. The concept of like the warp and the exploration of that. Like, take away all the Space Marine bit on your chest, but if you kind of look at it as a something to live for, as in the messages that are behind it, and I get you got to look for the messages, right? They're not there, right? But I'm saying as there is a way for it to kind of open your mind to kind of looking down other aspects of like what is our existence, and how much of is there a kind of conceptualizing a concept like the warp, obviously, that exists in some kind of esoteric sense, and then we're going down like a spiritual element here, but I mean in terms of that helps people kind of understand the concept of death and the meaning of life and those kinds of things, because it's, I mean, really when I argue it, they're all the same thing, because no one's got the answer yet, right? So whether you take it as Jesus or chakras or whatever, and 40k the warp, like you could, it's all well, I mean, true. It's all true until it's not true, right? Like, right.
Well, I suppose in that sense, bring it back to a more, I guess, everyday application. You've got, 40k, the novels and the stories and all that kind of stuff that's related. Again, being written from that sort of 1970s root sort of British satire element is that, and really that the whole point of a lot of the horrific nature of the Imperium and all that is that none of it's necessary, none of it's needed, and it's often seen like the novels often go into this and make it quite clear that if people act like decent human beings, they can, at least for a while, get stuff to work for them. And it's only when other folks come around and don't that really ruins it. And there's that idea that we create our own hell by all these horrendous excesses and being the worst bits of humanity, and that's what the Imperium is the amalgamation of all the worst bits of humanity throughout history, and it creates its own horrific little hellhole that exists in.
And yeah, I mean, I like to think there's some good in there too, between the bad things. I mean, I think.
Well, I think the idea isn't so much that that's all we can do. It's more so that if that's what you do, then that's where you'll end up.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
sorry, I'm not trying to say that in the sense of, you know, humanity is just all these bad things. It's more so that you can take all of the bad bits of humanity and go, well, guess what? It's actually pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the whole concept of something that is tangible to believe in. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I've struggled with that personally for a large portion of my life. That, like, you know, is there something out there? You know, that kind of deity question, and the kind of like I said, the meaning of life question. And look, I'm not sitting here turning around and going, the Emperor's real and 40k is real. I'm not retarded, like. But
The meaning of life is spending our precious dollars on GW.
Oh, I mean, look, I wouldn't. I'm one of those people that sits in the card that, look, I'm under no illusion. I don't think I'd be a space marine, but I would. Yeah, I think it would be okay. I think I'd be alright if I lived in 40k. I don't think I'd be dying straight away.
I think it'll take about 5 minutes for both of us to have our Imperial issue flak jackets and las guns turned into Molch by oncoming Tyranids.
Well, I mean, look, to be honest, I think I'd be like, you know, hanging in the abhuman bars in, like, not the underhive, but like the lower tiers of the hive, just before the underhive.
The seedier parts of the midhive.
Yeah, and we'd be hanging out there with, like, you know, your ratlings and your ogrins and your unsanctioned psychers, being like, just hanging out waiting for the next rogue trader to come by. I'd be like, yo, I need some help. I'd be like, where your guys, man? That's what I think. I mean, that's what I hope for, really. Yeah. So, I mean, look, we probably dragged on this bit, but that was fun. That was good. So yeah, we've been doing a bit, as you guys, well, we've been doing as much as we can with risky rollers. That, you know, as you all know, well, I'm truly aware now of the Melbourne's situation with lockdown restrictions and all those bits and pieces. But I think we just talk about, you know, what our plan is for risky rollers and the kind of things that we want to include, and just kind of to be, I guess, forthcoming with you guys. So
let's lever this podcast train back onto some sort of rails.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've unfortunately, of course, you're probably aware, there's this, funnily enough, a global pandemic kind of slows down the ability of people to live normal lives, and we've sort of been interrupted with our attempts to be getting down to the studio and filming regularly and putting out content at the pace that we'd like to.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm not sure if anyone is listening outside of Australia, especially maybe outside of Victoria, but just to give you a quick idea, is that, you know, we can't leave our homes past 9 o'clock. We
need special work permits to travel more than 5 kilometers from any of our homes.
Yep. You know, we've just been told now that we can't have our children in daycare, but we still have to pay for it. Anyway, we're not talking about politics. But anyway, so that's the kind of level of stuff that we're at. So we're beholden to that. But
that still does allow us to be sitting here and talking smack across the internet. Yep,
that's what's so great about the internet. So I mean, we have a plan to basically include. To start off, it's going to start with 40k. We're going to be pushing next into Kill Team.
Yep, we've got a bunch of really cool stuff on the way for that.
That's going to be very, very
minis,
very
terrain,
exciting.
All sorts of stuff. Yeah,
it's going to be a nice big section. Some new faces as well. Becoming part of the Risky Rollers team. So that's really cool. And then the next thing after that is going to be AOS.
Yep, we've got some Age of Sigmar stuff happening on the side.
And then on top of that, and we know that, you know, 100% of our audience at the moment is 40k, but we don't want to be just that. So we will be delving into 3 other games over the, you know, coming future. Not necessarily straight away. It's a little bit of a drip feed kind of process. And this is nowhere going to hinder what our current release schedule.
Right.
Like 40k
all
is
of this
always
is in
our
addition
priority.
to
in addition to our main 40k battle reports.
Yeah.
The
And
extra
that's
stuff we got on the side.
yeah, and that's going to be Star Wars Legion,
Yep.
Maelstrom's Edge, and
Yep.
Infinity.
Yep. And by we're going to be delving into this is essentially I'm twisting Locky's arm into letting me teach him how to play these other games.
Hey, look, I mean, I was awesome. I was into Star Wars before I was into 40k, so that's not that much arm twisting. But the other two, they're a little bit arm twisting.
I mean, I'm
look,
sitting here with 2 units of battle droids from Legion on my desk in front of me at the moment that I'm working on. So yeah.
And look, if Games Workshop decides to rejuvenate Battlefleet Gothic, we would be dropping everything, and we'll be doing that straight away.
That would be we'd be out in the stores buying up stock. We'd be painting non-stop. Imagine Battlefleet Gothic.
I mean, look, it's probably gonna happen.
I mean,
They've done everything else. So,
I mean, if they bring Battlefleet Gothic and Epic back, like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like,
it'd be pretty hard. I mean,
be happy for the next 30 years, no matter what else they do.
They already have a monopoly on the market. They'll probably have it even more. Anyway, so that's kind of our future plan of things.
Yeah.
And then we do want, and we're gonna bring it through this format, and also through our battle reports. And we did mention this in our first battle report about being relevant to the competitive scene.
Yes,
so we will be at some point releasing more competitive focused battle reports that take lists either that are prevalent in the meta, or as in metas differ all over the world. So maybe not necessarily Australian meta, maybe Australian meta. We don't know. We'll see.
Well, I think that's something we can play around with, and we're going to look into. I mean, being present in the Australian tournament scene. I mean, until the most recent restrictions and stuff, we had a few tournaments lined up. We were going to be attending, and as well as covering with some content that was going up.
That was shattering. We literally would be at one next week.
Next weekend, yeah.
Yeah, next weekend, which was Winter Wipeout. Who was the TO? It's
it was down in Geelong.
TTD, Throw the Dice.
Throw the Dice, yes.
Throw the Dice, yeah. So they had to cancel the event for obvious reasons, and look, it's a shame, but you got to financially, you just got to protect yourself. We totally get that.
And I mean, it wouldn't be allowed to be going ahead with the current restrictions anyway.
Exactly.
So it was the right decision.
Yeah, we do have another one coming up in October.
September.
Sorry. September's is the Normal Blokes.
Yeah.
Which is in Brisbane.
Yeah.
So
it's got probably about unlikely that's gonna happen.
2 weeks to find out whether or not we're gonna be able to get up there. And I've spoken to the Normal Blokes boys and kind of sussed out whether or not it's going to be viable. So look, we just play it by ear, but just to let you know on where we are with that stuff, and we have a plan, Dalton and myself, to somewhat document our tournament experience.
We're not sure exactly what form that'll take, but it is something that we want to be. Want to be covering tournaments and being able to be putting up videos and going, here's this tournament and here are the players in the armies that did well, and just here's what's going on in the tournament scene.
Yeah, so I think, like Dalton says, it's a little bit in progress or working, but I mean, primarily we kind of think it's a vlog kind of format.
Until we've been to a couple and actually done a bit of it, we're not really going to be able to say for sure how it'll come out.
Exactly. We just got to find out what works properly, and I think at this stage we have an idea that'll be like partially vlog, partially podcast. Where we'll kind of cover the whole tournament as a whole, and not just ourselves, but actually players and organisers. Speak to them and have their feedback on where they think that the Australian tournament scene is going, where it currently is, all those things. Now, don't get me wrong, those things currently exist. there's the whole bunch of people that talk about the Australian competitive scene. We're not trying to come in and take that over, but just kind of trying to look at it from a different perspective of
Yeah.
you know, maybe if just for people who are wanting to actually know what the tournament scene is like, you know, maybe they watch one of our vlog videos and they actually see what it's like and they go, oh, it's actually okay. And because, I mean, the more people we get involved from the tournament scene, I think, is going to bridge that gap between competitive and non-competitive play, which I think is important.
Yeah, for sure.
My personal opinion on it anyway is I think that that gap needs to be brought a little bit closer together.
Yeah, and I mean, along those same lines, the non-competitive sort of thing is that, you know, at the end of the day, we are just playing a game. We're here to have fun. So when it comes down to a really competitive match or a really non-competitive, you know, narrative play sort of thing, you know, you can still come into both of those from the same perspective almost of playing a cool game with these cool miniatures you've done. And I don't think it's necessary that there's this massive divide between them. Yeah,
that's true. All right. Well, I mean, that's kind of the main bulk of what we were going to talk about.
Yeah, and I think I'll touch on very, very briefly what all of that means for the more present, the more immediate future for what we're putting up on the channel, which is essentially that we're looking at releasing this podcast more or less every week until we can get back to battle reports themselves.
Yeah.
At which point we'll sort of try and alternate them and make sure we're having regular content regardless. And that means we can be talking a bit more directly, and we've been covering sort of new releases and news and stuff. We're sort of running a bit low on time for that with today's one, but we'll be able to be talking about all the new stuff GW are doing. I know we've just had our delivery for the Grey Knights and the Thousand Suns codices, so definitely like we've been keeping up with all the updates and the rules and the releases for those, and I certainly can't wait to be reading through the Thousand Suns book and really, you know, seeing what they can do and you know, seeing what they've been up to recently in the lore. And
yeah, I mean, look, off the bat, reading the GK Codex, it's good. It's good. They're both good. They're both really good. I mean, I like the fact they're different. You know, Grey Knights is now more of a powerhouse combat army. And having Psychic buff them rather than Psychic, you know, relying on it, which is it's better. It's how they are in the fluff. It makes more sense.
It's the main thing I'm taking away from. I mean, I'm gonna say it's for all the 9th edition codices, even though the power scaling's been a bit different for them, is that they are all fleshing out their own design space within the game. And that's really what I feel with them, is that each of the armies that have come out so far feel different to play. They exist in their own. They've got their own space and room to build an army and play style.
I think, barring Deathwatch, every army has gotten every 9th edition codex has fit more closely to the fluff than it has previously.
Yeah.
And I say barring Deathwatch because it just is.
Yeah.
It just is. Like, anyway, it's not bad. It's just that it's the one that's furthest away from it.
Yeah.
Because if they did it exactly how it is in the fluff, it'd be broken and it would just not be fun for other people playing against them.
Yep. Nonetheless, these are all fascinating topics for another day. We can spend a whole podcast going right into it, which we do plan on doing pretty soon. Particularly with the, I think we're scheduling the Grey Knights as a Codex review and read through for next week.
Yeah, we're still going to decide on exactly how that format's going to go. Whether it's going to be mixed in with something else, maybe just a longer podcast with that tacked on, or we're still going to figure out exactly what we're going to do there. But
I mean, it's a new thing. Let us know, in the YouTube comments, or you can contact us on Instagram or in the Discord even. Let us know, like, what do you want from the podcast, and what do you think could be some good things for us to be covering. We've definitely got a host of topics and things we're keen to talk about, and a bunch of people who we're keen to have on and get involved. So,
yeah, definitely. So at the time of filming, Hammer and Bolter's first episode came out, Well,
Yeah.
not came out, but was early screen. So I've got to ask.
I think I watched it. I watched it about 20 minutes before we recorded this.
All right, sweet.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts? Hit me.
It was solid.
Okay.
It was good. I have one complaint, and it's a pet peeve of mine with a lot of recent 40k stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's a really tiny detail that I'm imagining 99% of people listening do not give a damn about.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it.
What is that pet peeve?
Lasers. Las guns.
Yeah.
Red. No. It's not even the color. The color's fine. Las guns in this fire like Star Wars blasters.
Yes. Yeah,
and
okay, that was one of my many listed things that you me about.
And now they've been doing this recently with a few different things. Now, las guns very specifically are laser weapons.
Yes, they are.
That's what they are. Now, Dawn of War got this right perfectly as far as a laser weapon should look if you're assuming that you can power a laser enough to do damage.
Except for the color was blue, and that made no sense.
In Dawn of War?
Yeah.
The color was red.
Las cannons of Predators were blue.
Oh, okay. I mean, look, lasers can be different colors. It doesn't really...
I know, but it just
doesn't really bother me too much.
When you had the las guns as red and then the las cannons as blue, you're like, why?
Yeah,
anyway.
But as far as the actual the animation for them in Dawn of War was, you had a single beam of light that existed at every point along it throughout the entirety of its discharge. That is what a laser. Now, to be fair, there's the whole can you power a laser enough to actually cause damage at range? But assuming you can, a laser weapon would appear to fire a single unbroken beam of light.
Yes, you can't. The whole Star Wars thing you can't do.
Star Wars blasters
don't exist.
In Star Wars lore, plasma weapons. They fire condensed plasma packets. This has been made abundantly clear in a bunch of different Star Wars novels. They call them blasts, they call them lasers because that sounds cooler, I guess, is what they thought at this time.
I don't know, man. Plasma sounds way cooler than... Anyway, but yeah.
I mean, but as far as they call them lasers, but in the lore, they are plasma weapons.
Yeah, okay, right.
In 40k, we have the distinction between plasma guns and laser weapons.
Right.
Las guns fire lasers. So,
and that's the thing, even in like Gothic Armada and stuff, the Lancers, which is essentially like an even more
huge las cannons.
Huge las cannons. They do it exactly the same, like the correct way. They wear like
it's Dawn of War. It's a beam. Essentially, it's this beam of laser. And I mean, from it's been a while since I've played it, so maybe I'm misremembering it. But I think even the Space Marine video game got it correct, where the Imperial Guard in that would fire them. It's been described in.
You're testing my memory too. I'm not sure if I can remember.
It's been ages since I played that. It's been described in many books and novels and other things that las guns they fire with a slight crack as the air
gets cooked around it.
Cooked around it, and it's a beam of light that lances out and connects the 2 points.
Okay.
Pretty common description. And so every time I've seen a Star Wars a 40k animation or video game or anything like Darktide, the new video game, they do it as well. Their las guns fire like little plasma guns. And I watched that trailer and went, that looks horrendous.
Yeah, but they can't. They've done that because it's reflective of gameplay, 100%.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, they can't have it. But anyway, so
it doesn't excuse the fact that they should have just given them a stub gun, an auto gun, or a plasma gun.
Yep, agreed.
Again, Imperial Guardsmen, they, in lore-wise at least, often carry auto guns and stubbers. We just don't see that in the table because the models come with las guns.
So, as things to be upset with the video go, that's bugger all, really.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like,
which is good.
I'm well aware this is a tiny little thing that most people don't care about, but that's my big thing.
I had a few more things where I was just like,
yeah, let's hear them.
It's not violent enough. It's just straight up not violent enough. Like enough things don't go. There's not enough blood. That's the first thing. The second thing, the whole concept of orcs talking to each other like that. It just, I liked the idea of the orcs narrating it and being the kind of, satirical origins of where the orcs came from and yada yada yada. But I don't think it was the best way to tell that story, because I get it. I get it from a point of what am I trying to say? What do you get? Like campfire story, right? Like it's like a campfire story, right?
The concept,
older
the trope.
Wise guy. Yeah, the trope is that. I think it's just lost when it's orcs doing that. And it just didn't feel like the main dude was orky enough. And then with the whole like, oh, they're running away. It felt weak. Okay, that's what I'm saying. The orcs felt weak.
I mean, I enjoyed a lot of the orky comedy that those 3 or 4 characters had. But yes, I get what you mean, and I think it potentially detracted from the story of
it was too heavy.
Gazgul and Yarrick.
It was. I agree. The comedy was great. It was too heavy-handed.
Well, it was a 20-minute video, and they would have spent 5 or even 7 minutes of that on those guys.
Yeah,
and not on Yarrick kicking ass and Gazgul being Gazgul.
Yeah, I think there was too much of Yarrick's the good guy, Gazgul's the bad guy kind of thing as well, which is just not what the whole story is at all. That's the impression I got anyway.
Okay, I didn't really have much of an impression of that at all, other than just, they're guys that fight each other for a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I didn't really feel there were much.
Maybe it was just screen time. Like a lot of it was more focused on Yarrick rather than focused on equally amount of.
I mean, it's called Old Baelai. It's very much about Yarrick.
True, that is true. I mean, maybe there's just. It's the bad part of me that just likes to see the bad guy win. I don't know. And look, the thing I did like was the art style.
I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, the kind of half moving, half not moving anime / non-anime style. Manga / non-manga style was cool.
The Space Marines that showed up, I noticed specifically the Space Marines that showed up on, I think it was Armageddon.
Blood Angels?
The Blood Angels. I think they must have been CG models that were rendered in. But for the few frames of screen time that they had, they looked fantastic. Like their movement coming out of the drop pods and stuff, compared with the hand-drawn style of animation around them, looked fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what kind of bummed me too, that they showed that. Like, I felt that you just kept it on the guard. Actually, the part that I loved the most was the part about him being, actually, I'm not going to say that for people who may or did not watch it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. We'll keep away from the spoilers for it. But,
sorry. That was close.
I think I know the part you mean, where there was a thing that happened and it was pretty cool.
And it did that thing, and it was like,
wow.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, look, I think what they're doing with it is really cool. I like the fact that it's anthological. That's I think the biggest saving grace with it is that. Yeah, when people turn around and go, "Oh, that sucked," it's like, well, you don't have to worry about it again because
the next one is 300 years later and several thousand light years away.
Exactly. Well, but I mean, I think the thing about Hammer and Bolter, it's done like Love, Death and Robots.
Yep.
So it's completely different people, different art style, different story every time, which is really cool. And Love, Death and Robots has shown that it's a very successful way to tell stories within a universe or within an idea or within a concept. So I think it's really clever that they've done that.
My main takeaway from this specific episode was that it's something that I'm glad it exists. It could have been better. It could have been a lot worse.
It could have been a lot worse, and I think that's why a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, this sucks," and "Oh my god," and you're like, guys, they've done some pretty bad things in the past, and this is a million times better. So be happy you got this, because this is better than nothing. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm glad it exists, and it's going to be interesting to see the rest of the stuff that they do with Hammer and Bolter and with some of the other shows they're working on.
I mean, we're all just waiting for Astartes too, right?
That and the Exodite. Those are my two big ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
all right, man.
I think that's probably about time to wrap up the first Risky Rollers podcast. Bit of a long rambling one, but that's all right. It's a podcast, a bit more relaxed. We're just hanging out.
Yes, I mean it's a bit more about us this one anyway. I mean we're gonna have people on, and we're gonna focus a bit on them and lore and armies and
absolutely
all sorts of bits and pieces.
I've got a few episode ideas about having specific people on and doing specific bits of lore and discussion. So
yeah,
I'm definitely keen to
and
set that up.
Make sure if you guys have any thoughts on anything that you'd like to see, or you'd like us to improve, or you want us to do differently, just hit us up on any way, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or through our Patreon, through our Discord. We are active across all of our channels, so there's no one better or worse place to hit us up.
Yep,
even
absolutely.
Email.
Yeah,
I'll answer you back straight away. So
yep. Yeah, for sure.
Get in contact with us, and yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, all that stuff.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, or you'd like something where a bit more directed and focused on some gameplay and that sort of aspects of the game, we do actually have a podcast up for our patrons, which is specifically a list analysis and game discussion. So
that we call the pre-game show.
It is the Risky Rollers pre-game show.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that before every battle report for the Patreon members, where we will be, as Dalton said, going right deep into not only the lists themselves, but strategies and plays and synergies and how we think things can play out, and what we can work to the best of our advantage to beat our opponent. Yeah,
and I mean for the time being, at least, that's our main output for, I guess, more competitive side of the game. Although we'll definitely be covering a lot more competitive stuff on this one as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
for sure.
So make sure to check that one out. And I'll echo Locky. Get in touch with us if you've got stuff to chat about, especially the Discord. We're active in there. We've got a great community we're building in there.
The Discord's growing.
Always stuff happening. I saw some fantastic minis being painted on there earlier today. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, we always have at least between 1 and 2 to 3 games a week of TTS played through there, and
at least, yeah.
Yeah, at least. So it's a good way, especially with lockdown, to be able to get some game time in. And we got a big thank to all our current patrons. Actually, I don't have their names up right now, but for next time, 100%, I will mention you guys and give you guys shout outs, because it's been amazing.
It's a good idea. Let's do it
to get your support already. Yeah, it's just, we're both so appreciative of you guys already.
Absolutely.
Stepping out to support the channel and throw your money behind us. So
it's really humbling to think about that yeah, people are out there going, I actually want to give some money to these guys who are doing this thing. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's very validating. It's very awesome, and it just enables us to create better and better content for you guys. I mean, that's the goal, right? Like, it's a win-win.
Oh, absolutely.
It is total win-win.
But so on that note, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And if you're listening on one of our many other platforms, make sure to leave us a review and tune in for the next one.
No worries. Great chatting, Brian.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for listening to the Risky Rollers podcast. We'll see you guys next time.